Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. This is Orphanlast, aka Skylar Madison. Now, I'm still working on that video that's going to be highly edited together. It's going to basically be a lesson as well as a bit of a test to see if you guys can draw a more complex video. But while I'm still preparing for that video, I still need to teach a few more things. Now, earlier, I had this video right here, the appreciation video, and I designed what could potentially be a t-shirt design. And this symbol that my mascot is standing on is the symbol that you need to draw in perspective in order to find the center of an area. Okay, now this blue line represents the center of that area. Now, if I go into Affinity Designer here, and let me just go ahead and just show you what I mean here. Let me create a new layer and pull out a brush. Now, if I were to draw, say, a square that's somewhat in perspective, let me turn on pressure sensitivity here. If I draw a square in perspective, as if it's going off towards vanishing points and such like that, okay? And I go ahead and I draw an X down from one corner to the other and draw a line going up, I have the center of this area here. And not only that, I could go ahead and split this in half both directions. I have the center in multiple different ways. So that's important to understand. But because of this line right here, if I were to connect every single one of these corners to this top portion here, I have a perfect pyramid, basically. So that's something that can be really helpful. So let's say you need to find something like halfway here. You could go ahead and draw another X right here, and you have another halfway mark right here. So 1/4 of the way. So you could have like this oblong shaped pyramid if you wanted to, just by doing a few quick measurements and such like that. Now this video right here that you're currently watching, you're able to do the same thing. It's the same sort of concept. We're going to be talking about how to split an object into thirds. So in this t-shirt design, I'm going to be drawing out basically the rune or the symbol for splitting an object into thirds. And how you do that is you have your area, okay, which is a square inside of perspective typically. So you have an area, it's a square. You draw out an X to find your center, okay? This is usually the starting point of every last symbol that you draw, okay? And then you draw a line that goes from the center out and such like that. And then basically you draw an arrow like that from the corners, okay? So from the corners of the square to the center that you just found to create the arrow. And then you create another arrow. Alright? Now, what you will find when this is drawn out properly is that this area and this area are collinear. And so what you'll have is like, you'll be able to draw out a line here and a line right here. That way, if I were to select these lines and start getting rid of them, you would have your image split up into thirds. Now, I'm freehanding this, so this isn't the most accurate thing in the world, but that's how you find thirds. Okay, and so throughout the rest of this video, I'm going to spend some time just enjoying the experience of creating an image out of this concept. Okay? And I've started this out with an image that I've already drawn. I'm going to start this out by applying shadows and highlights. I've decided I'm going to actually include the video where I created the t-shirt design that says "You're my center." I'm going to include that in the Teach Me to Draw series, and I'm even going to include this into the Teach Me to Draw series, because ultimately I've been thinking about it, and really honestly I am teaching how to draw in perspective right now. This symbol that I'm drawing is going to be on the thumbnail. And you guys can download the thumbnail to the You're My Center, or the appreciation thumbnail. You can download that one. You can download this one, or any of them. Any of the images inside of my thumbnails. You can download them. And if you forget what one of these specific symbols do, you could look at the thumbnail and you can actually see what it does. Now, specifically for this image, I mean, since it's a means in order to split an area up into thirds, I thought, okay, well, at every split, I should treat it like split text, where you basically take text, make it look like it's been cut by a knife, and then you offset the different sections a little bit. Now, that can actually look really cool for text, because it gets people to look at your design or your image in general just a little bit longer. And I feel as though the best type of split text is the type where they're not consciously aware that it's been split, where they spend extra time looking at your image or design, and yet they don't really know why. If they're able to actually be consciously aware that they're looking at text that's been mutilated or something like that, it oftentimes gets people to think, why? Why did they do that? And it brings too much attention to the graphic designer instead of putting the emphasis on the actual thing that you're trying to promote. And if you guys want to see an example of split text, you can either use Google Images, or you could look at the thumbnail that I made for the logo redesign 2019 videos thumbnail. I thought that turned out looking pretty good, to be honest. And some of the reason why I did split text at that point in time is because I was still trying to hone down some sort of workflow for splitting objects. I was actually having this video in mind, preparing for it. Now, where everything went wrong was where I was trying to split a complex object, and in this case, the complex object is my mascot. He is far more complex than just a letter form. If this was Affinity Photo or Photoshop, no problem, I'd be able to get this done real quick. But Affinity Designer, even Adobe Illustrator, it uses different logic than what I'm used to. And so I just simply had to try a bunch of different things. The Boolean functions did not help me at all in splitting up my mascot at all. What it did was it seemed like it was deleting things that I didn't want to have deleted. And then other times it seemed like it reorganized my layers panel. Every single object was just in the wrong stacking order. So even if I spent a whole bunch of time reorganizing my layers panel, I would still have no guarantee as to whether or not it deleted something that it shouldn't have. So I was really confused there for a little while as to what I should do.
Should I continue trying to beat my head against the wall and try to see if I can make some sort of Boolean function that works, or what should I do?
And ultimately, this is what it kind of boiled down to. I finished making the symbol for splitting up an object into thirds, and then I started to select all of the line work and just get rid of all of the line work that was outside of the symbol itself. I had to do this manually, and once I reached a point to where I selected every single line and every single colored object outside of the symbol, I was now at a starting point to where I could actually start splitting up the character's face. I then started to create a new layer here and there for the line work. So we're splitting this face up into thirds, so I needed to have 3 different layers for my line work. 1, 2, and 3. Okay? I was selecting each line of the character's line work and created a new control point right at the split, and went ahead and selected whatever the button is to make it so that right at that control point it splits into 2 different lines, 2 different objects. I did that with every single line at every single split. It didn't really take as long as most people might think that would take. With me just describing it, sounds like it would take forever, but it really didn't. And then, I was thinking, well, I need to start selecting each and every single one of these lines and putting them into their respective layer to signify that these lines belong to this section of the split, and this series of lines belongs to this other section of the split, and etc., etc. This would make it so that I could just select a layer really quick and then be able to move all of my lines a little bit to offset it just a bit right at the split. And that didn't work out very well. It's weird because you can select lines, and if there's like 2 or 3 lines that are difficult to select, it doesn't matter if you've selected 50 different lines or something. Like, those 2 or 3 lines that are difficult to select can make it so that you accidentally deselect everything that you've already selected. So you have to start all the way over again until you encounter the other 2 lines that are difficult to select. And then you have to start all the way over, all over again. So I just wound up grabbing like 5 or 6 lines and then throwing it into a layer. And then selecting 5 or 6 lines and then throwing those into a layer. That is what took a little bit of time with the line work, trying to deal with that issue. The next thing to tackle was the color work. How do I do the color work? Because the Boolean functions won't work with the line work. Ultimately, trying a Boolean function with the line work, it created every single line as a closed shape. So put simply, it made it so that every single line was accompanied by a new one, and it looked really stupid. So trying to do the Boolean functions with the color, it just reorganized everything and possibly even deleted things that I didn't want to have done. So what I did is I just copied my color work. So I had 3 different layers or groups or whatever for the coloring. Once I did that, it was pretty easy going, really. All I needed to do was create a bunch of control points where I needed them right at the split, and then delete everything outside of that region in order to get the colors to be on 3 different layers to create the splits, and then offset them. Now, you may think, well, you know, you did the shadows and highlights, there must have been hundreds of different colors for you to work with and do that for. Not really, because you're able to clip or mask different objects into another object. So as long as you parent things up properly with the colors, you only need to deal with the parent color. You don't have to deal with every little shadow and highlight shape in order to shape things the way you need them to be. You just shape the master shape, and that's it. I know that I'm not being very articulate in describing that, but that's ultimately all you do. I'm still making sense, I know that much. But yeah, so the whole point of this video, and the videos that are going to be similar, is to prepare you guys with the knowledge that you'll need for the really difficult video for you guys. It's going to be really difficult for you guys, but it's also a lot of editing for me. So this is all to prepare you for that video. It's going to be difficult. I promise you it's going to be difficult. It's difficult for anybody, even an experienced artist. Throughout the video, I make multiple mistakes. I go ahead and include those mistakes inside of the video so that you guys can kind of see what sort of mistakes that even an experienced artist winds up making, and kind of see the sort of workflow and thought process that an artist is thinking about in order to correct problems or mistakes and things like that. This is really important, I feel, for people to learn how to draw. Now, at this point in time inside of the video, you see me manipulating the colors with photo filters. Since this is all vector, the photo filters are fine as long as you ultimately just alter the entire image or the entire layer if it's clipped in or masked into it. Ultimately, I tend to think of colors that I put down initially as just being kind of like a base color. And then I start messing with the photo filters, regardless of if it's Affinity Photo or Affinity Designer. And the photo filters are really useful, especially in Affinity Photo or Photoshop even, because photo filters are raster. So if you start really changing things a lot inside of Affinity Designer and, you know, doing a lot of brush work with your photo filters, it's not going to come out the way you want, especially if you need to blow up the image to being the size of a billboard later on in life. So, you know, I tried not to go too crazy with the photo filters, but if you're not doing a bunch of fancy brush work, you're just fine. You'll be just fine. So here you can actually see the image that I've created. You can see that this separates an area into 3 parts. The image is offset just a little bit in all 3 parts, so that just by looking at this symbol, you're able to see exactly what it does. Memorize the symbol. Practice drawing it. Try using it instead of perspective drawings of your own. See how it can help you. Anyways, guys, that pretty much concludes it for this video. If you guys enjoyed it, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. If you guys would like to get more notifications from me, feel free to click on the bell or go ahead and follow me on Twitter. If you guys would like to see more of my content, feel free to click on anything that's appearing on the screen right now. Thank you very much for your time.